Hey guys, welcome to the third installment of Women's Wrestling Focus, brought to you by SEScoops and hosted by me, Ella J, of a Wrestling Gal podcast. Now, Women's Wrestling Focus promises to bring you the best showcase and spotlight of the past, the present, and the future of women's wrestling. Now, we are just coming off the brink of WrestleMania week, and what an incredible week it was. So we are here to talk about all things women's wrestling and NXT Takeover, NXT UK Prelude, and WrestleMania itself, Night 1 and Night 2. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Now, kicking off of WrestleMania week was NXT Takeover Stand and Deliver, where Night 1 featured two women's wrestling matches, the first being on the pre-show and the second being the main event of the night. Now, before we talk about the main event of the night, we have to talk about the amazing showing on the pre-show between, I guess, the veteran in the situation, Toni Storm, versus the newly signed Zoey Stark to WWE NXT. Now, we saw Zoey Stark defeat the well-respected Toni Storm and an incredible showing. Now, I am so happy that Zoey Stark has finally been properly given an opportunity to showcase herself in a victory, and I have nothing but high hopes for her. That was such an incredible matchup, very solid match between two well-respected and two capable athletes in the ring, and I am so excited to see where Zoey is going to go from here, and it's interesting to see where Toni Storm will end up in the shuffle. Will we see Toni Storm possibly be called up after this? Will she go back to the NXT Women's Championship picture, or will this kind of spark a feud between the two? I'm hoping for the latter, so I would love to see a feud between Toni Storm and Zoey Stark for sure. And also on the card for NXT Stand and Deliver was the main event of the night. Io Shirai, the NXT Women's Champion, versus the challenger, Raquel Gonzalez. Now, we've obviously seen this build-up between Io and Raquel going on for the last few months, as Raquel and Dakota Kai have since dropped the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, which they only held for about an hour. Obviously, that reign served a bigger purpose, as they were ultimately going to have Raquel go after the NXT Women's Champion, Io Shirai. And I must say, if anybody was going to take this championship off of Io Shirai, Raquel Gonzalez was a very formidable and solid choice. Raquel has improved so much since debuting last year at NXT alongside Dakota Kai. You know, we've seen her pin Io Shirai at War Games. We've seen her defeat Rhea Ripley, a former NXT Women's Champion. And this matchup between Io and Raquel definitely deserved their main event slot. It was a little bit shorter than I had hoped, but nevertheless, both women definitely made the best of it. We saw Io Shirai jump off of a large skull in Io Shirai fashion. We saw Raquel Gonzalez get her feat of strength in, and so overall, I was very, very pleased with this matchup and the crowning of a new NXT Women's Champion. I love my girl Io, but if anybody was going to take the championship off of her, Raquel has definitely earned her spot in NXT, so I look forward to her going forward. I'm wondering what is going to happen with Dakota Kai. Will they go after the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships again? We know WWE likes double champions sometimes, so it wouldn't be too far off. Or will we see Dakota Kai turn on Raquel Gonzalez? Perhaps she doesn't want to live in her shadow. Perhaps Dakota Kai wants to make a name for herself again. Will she go after Raquel now? And where will Io Shirai end up? You know, Io Shirai could possibly get called up to the main roster, or Io Shirai could get her revenge and try and reclaim her title back. Nevertheless, I am super excited for this feud going forward. This was such an incredible matchup, and I'm glad that WWE is ushering us into a new era of the NXT Women's Division. I'm super excited. That was such an incredible matchup. All women in this main event were amazing, and I'm very interested to see where they go from here. And moving on to night 2 of NXT TakeOver, we saw the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon defend their championships against The Way Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. I must say it was a solid matchup, and Shotzi Blackheart definitely went balls off the wall here and successfully retained her championship alongside Ember Moon in their NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. I thought this was a pretty solid matchup against two formidable opponents in Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. They definitely put on a great display for the NXT Women's Tag Team division, as it's still kind of a new and evolving and developing division. So I'm excited to see where NXT goes from here. Will they keep the same opponents? I mean, they do have some depth. I mean, they have Kaden Carter and Kacy Catanzaro. They have Gigi Dolan and Elena Black, and they have Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. So they have some depth. They could even go back to their first ever champions in Raquel and Dakota Kai, which, like I said previously, they like dipping their toes into potential double champions. So that would not surprise me at all. But I am so happy that they have a secondary championship, especially from their evolving and expanding NXT women's division. This secondary championships gives more women a chance to showcase themselves on NXT. And perhaps we could even get like a third installment of women. Sometimes you don't even need a championship to have a proper storyline and legitimate feud. So maybe, we will see. But nevertheless, this NXT women's tag team division is definitely going to be put on notice from the current tag team champions. And I'm excited to see where they go forward from here. Who will be their next opponents for Ember and Shotzi? Will it be Candice and Indy trying to get their revenge and get a rematch? I think that's a logical idea. So we will see from here. But NXT TakeOver as a whole was a great time for the women. We crowned a brand new NXT Women's Champion, and we saw the defending champs retain their championships. So I'm excited for the future of NXT as it evolves and grows its women's division. And continuing on with NXT, we also saw NXT UK Preload happening this past Thursday, where we saw a tag team matchup with the current NXT UK Women's Champion Kaylee Ray teaming up with Isla Dawn against Meiko Satomura and Amelia McKenzie, formerly known as Millie McKenzie to most. And this one was a pretty solid matchup as well. Again, you have four strong and dominant women in the NXT UK Women's division who are perfectly capable of carrying their own. I mean, you have the legend, the veteran Meiko Satomura teaming with the newly signed Amelia McKenzie, who is perfectly capable of handling her own, as she is so incredible. And I'm so glad that she is signed and now officially part of NXT UK. And you had them against two veterans of NXT UK, the reigning champion, the longest reigning NXT UK Women's Champion, Kaylee Ray, of over 500 days. That's incredible. And also, can't count out Isla Dawn. She's been there since the beginning of NXT UK. And I'm excited that this matchup brought out a lot in their competitors. It showed the depth of the NXT UK women's division. And we also saw at the end there that Valkyrie doesn't want to be left out of the conversation. I believe she's undefeated in NXT UK, right? So at the end of the day, Meiko Satomura and Amelia McKenzie did get their win against Kaylee Ray and Isla Dawn. But it really wasn't in clean fashion. We saw a roll-up pin as the final outcome of this match. So I think the outcome was fair, as you want to protect all competitors and don't want anybody to lose cleanly, especially with your major baby faces, and you don't want Kaylee Ray to necessarily lose cleanly either. So I thought that the outcome and the finish of this match was fair because it protected all four women. And at the end, we saw Valkyrie come out and kind of make a statement. It was quick, it was short, but she made her statement. She's there perhaps for the NXT UK Women's Championship. And we got a lot of girls now getting signed and being showcased. We recently saw Stevie Turner debut. We've seen Piper Niven. We've seen Ginny. NXT UK Women's Division is not one to count out. Their hard work does not go unnoticed, and I think that everybody needs to put on watch because this NXT UK Women's Division has so much depth right now, so many amazing talent. So don't sleep on the NXT UK Women's Division. They are incredible, and I can't wait to see who's going to be next in line for Kaylee Ray. Who's going to go for it? We got so many amazing names in this division, so I'm super excited for the future of the NXT UK. And now we have to talk about the biggest event of the week, WrestleMania. Now we will start with night one because it was a 2-day event, as we all know. So night one featured 2 women's wrestling matches on the card, but we also did get to see a lot of Bayley as the kind of official third host of the evening, and she did so many incredible things. She was so hilarious in her backstage segments, and we did see her come out on night 2 against the Bella Twins. So that was an incredible moment. I am just so happy that Bayley still got her moment at WrestleMania. Even though she wasn't officially on the card, I am still so happy that Bayley was able to show her hilarious heel side out there. But talking about the official matches on the card now, night 1 featured 2 women's wrestling matches, like I said. The first being the women's tag team turmoil matchup, where they determined the number 1 contender for Shayna and Nia's WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. Now, this match felt a little bit shorter than most of the other matches. In fact, I think it was the shortest on the card. It felt a little bit rushed, to be honest, but I am just glad that the women were given another chance to spotlight themselves. It gave 10 women a chance to get a WrestleMania moment or just basically showcase their stuff. There was so many incredible gears out there, first of all. But this matchup featured Naomi and Lana, Dana and Mandy, Carmella and Billie Kay, the Riot Squad, Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, and Tamina and Natalya. And in the end, it was the Riot Squad versus Natalya and Tamina. And in the end, the veterans, the generational superstars, Natalya and Tamina, emerged victorious. This was incredible for them. As you know, they have kind of been underutilized in the last few years, especially the last few months. But we got to see some nostalgia be brought back into this as we saw a frog splash from Tamina and a heart attack from Natalya. How incredible was that? That was a surreal moment for fans of their families. And it was so cool to see 2 generational superstars duke it out and emerge victorious and now be given a chance for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. And also on the card, we saw the main event of WrestleMania, the SmackDown Women's Champion Sasha Banks versus the Women's Royal Rumble winner Bianca Belair. I still have chills from this match. And before the match even started, I was shedding tears from Bianca and Sasha, like almost on the verge of tears. This match transcended wrestling. It was the first time in a long time where women main evented WrestleMania. It had been 2 whole years since women had last main evented WrestleMania, and you could feel the energy, the electricity, and just the inspiration of this matchup. I can't explain it. Just watching it back, you get chills watching magic unfold before your eyes. And you saw the strength of Bianca Belair versus the intelligence of Sasha Banks in this matchup be on full display. There was so many incredible spots, from Bianca literally lifting up Sasha Banks and walking her up the steel stairs up to the ring, to Sasha using Bianca's hair as a part of the bank statement, possibly the most innovative bank statement I have ever seen, to Sasha Banks's welt from being whipped by Bianca Belair's hair, which you can completely see from the end of the matchup. It was so intense and so moving, and it was such an honor to see magic unfold before my very eyes. I was so emotional afterwards, and this one was really, really tough to call. I was rooting for both of them and could see both of them emerging victorious. But at the end of the day, we saw a new SmackDown Women's Champion crowned as the former Royal Rumble winner Bianca Belair defeated Sasha Banks with a KOD, which apparently has never been kicked out of. That's a fun fact, which I am so glad that Bianca has been able to keep that up. So it's definitely a protected finisher for sure. But Bianca Belair emerged victorious after pinning the former now SmackDown Women's Champion Sasha Banks. And now she is the new SmackDown Women's Champion. Incredible. This match will go down in history as possibly the best women's wrestling match, not only in WWE history, I think, but possibly of all time. This match meant so much, and honestly transcended wrestling, as it gave hope to so many women out there and little girls that women can do anything. Women can main event WrestleMania. Women can overcome and captivate a crowd and showcase themselves on a grand platform like WrestleMania. Women are unstoppable. This match brought so much joy to me and so many tears of joy. It was incredible, and I am so happy for the new SmackDown Women's Champion. I am so proud of both competitors. Sasha Banks did an incredible job putting over Bianca Belair here. Don't count her out. She also contributed so much to this match, not only besides the winner of it, but Sasha Banks did her thing out there. Their gears were amazing, by the way, but Sasha Banks contributed so much to this match, just as much as Bianca Belair did, and they worked together so well. It was just magic, and it really was an honor to see it out there in front of my eyes live in my lifetime. I'm just speechless, honestly. That matchup was so incredible, and I am proud of both competitors, and I'm interested to see where they're going to go from here now. Will Sasha Banks get her rematch, or will somebody else be introduced to the SmackDown Women's Championship picture? Where will Bianca Belair go from here? But either way, this is now the era of Bianca Belair, so I'm ready. I'm ready to go for a ride. Let's go. Now, kicking off night 2 of WrestleMania, we saw Alexa Bliss play a big part in the Randy Orton versus the Fiend matchup. Now, Alexa came out in her kind of spooky gear and spooky makeup, which was super, super dope to see. But we kind of see Alexa turn on the Fiend, or Alexa is controlling the Fiend. We don't really know what's going on here, but I'm really digging it. So we did see Randy Orton beat the Fiend at WrestleMania, but Alexa Bliss had a big part to do with it. We saw the Fiend kind of stare at Alexa like he was being possessed or controlled by her. So it's very alluring to see this unfold before our eyes. So I'm excited and intrigued to see where they are going to go from here with Alexa Bliss. Is she controlling the Fiend? Where is the Fiend going to go from here? Is this feud over? We will see, but I'm very intrigued. And I'm very happy that Alexa Bliss has been put in this position, because I think this new character kind of just revamped her and repackaged her into this new layer of Alexa that we've never seen before. We've never really seen her play a very dark character before, and she has come into her own in this. She is fully embracing and embodying this new character, and I think she's doing phenomenal. So I'm very much on Team Alexa to see where this feud goes from here. Now, to the actual women's wrestling matches of Night 2 of WrestleMania, we saw the Women's Tag Team Championships being defended against the Night 1 Tag Team Turmoil winners, Natalya and Tamina, against the current champions, Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax. Now, it was a solid matchup, but perhaps the biggest takeaway of all of this was the amazing ovation and crowd reaction that Tamina got. I was so incredibly thrilled that Tamina finally got a WrestleMania moment, and it was super, super cool to see two kind of different families collide in the ring. Obviously, Tamina and Nia Jax are part of the Samoan dynasty, so you always have that family connection in between them, but it was very cool to see the Hart dynasty and the Samoan dynasty all be in one matchup. It was super cool to see that. Obviously, we did not see Tamina and Natalya emerge victorious. We did see Shayna and Nia retain, but obviously one of the biggest takeaways of this match was Tamina finally getting that WrestleMania moment, and that ovation was insane, possibly one of the loudest chants of the night. I was so incredibly thrilled for them, and I want to know what is going to happen now that Tamina and Natalya lost. Who is going to be next in line for the women's tag team titles? Obviously, Shayna and Nia retained, as they are on Raw. So will we see some Raw tag team step up to the plate again? Or perhaps the Riot Squad still did have a good showing in the tag team turmoil matchup. Perhaps will they be the next number one contenders? It's definitely not foreign territory to have Nia and Shayna go to SmackDown. Will they go on SmackDown this week? We will see who will be next in line. So I'm excited for the future of the of the women's tag team titles. I just want to see what they're going to do next. So who will step up to the plate, and will there be new champions soon? Or will this perhaps be a lengthy reign from Shayna and Nia? We will see. And finally, the last women's wrestling matchup of the week, we saw the Raw Women's Championship being defended against the newly main roster debuted Rhea Ripley and the current champion at the time, Asuka. Now, this one was super cool because we had already seen a new SmackDown Women's Champion and a new NXT Women's Champion. So was WWE going to go 3 for 3 in their main women's championships? They did, in fact. And this one was super cool because Rhea Ripley had just debuted on the main roster officially. And this year, she kind of got retribution for her loss last year at WrestleMania. And this was actually her first time wrestling in front of a crowd at WrestleMania. So it was a super cool and fun moment for her to not only be on the grandest stage of them all, finally in front of a crowd, but to kind of get retribution for last year from when she lost the NXT Women's Championship. It felt like it really uplifted her spirits, and Asuka has been such an incredible champ throughout this last year in the pandemic era. She has really carried the Raw Women's division this last year with so much grace and so much character work and so much athleticism. Asuka has really been unstoppable this last year, so it was really good to see that we are finally being ushered into a new era, I guess you would like to call it, the era of Rhea Ripley. I am so excited for Rhea Ripley. This finally feels like she's gaining some traction back after she lost that championship last year at WrestleMania. Her momentum was kind of stopped and halted, and we kind of saw her get lost in the shuffle. So I have high hopes for this new reign of Rhea Ripley. I really hope that she goes full force with this reign, especially now with Charlotte being back in the Raw Women's Championship picture. I'm glad that matchup is being revisited as Rhea Ripley can finally get proper retribution against Charlotte Flair. And don't count out Asuka. She's always going to be involved as she technically is kind of still in line for a rematch, right? A proper rematch anyways. So I'm excited for the Raw Women's Championship picture right now. We have 3 top women in Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, and Asuka. And perhaps maybe we'll see some returns coming soon, or maybe we will see some other women thrown in the mix and given a shot. I am just super excited and have really high hopes for this reign. I really hope to see Rhea Ripley's momentum continue forward, as I think she is a proper and solid champion for this time. And like I said before, it's the era of Bianca Belair on SmackDown. This is the era of Rhea Ripley on Raw. So I am all for it. And that about concludes this edition of Women's Wrestling Focus. Thank you all for tuning in and joining. I hope you all had an incredible WrestleMania week. It was definitely so refreshing to finally see a crowd back at these shows so the superstars could enjoy and feed off of them. It really breathed life into them and myself, it felt like, watching from home. It was so amazing to see finally a crowd being able to interact with the superstars. It was such a history-making, or herstory-making, I should say, week of women's wrestling. We saw 3 new women's champions crowned. Raquel Gonzalez is the new NXT Women's Champion. Bianca Belair is the new SmackDown Women's Champion. And Rhea Ripley is the newly crowned Raw Women's Champion. So it was a huge week for women's wrestling. And I am so excited that we all got to live it and breathe it and watch it. Finally, I am so thrilled from this last week of WrestleMania. I hope you all had a safe and wonderful time if you attended or if you watched from home. Let us know what your thoughts were of WrestleMania. Did you enjoy the women's wrestling matches on the card? Did you enjoy NXT Takeover? Did you enjoy NXT UK Prelude? We got so much content in this last week. It was really hard to keep up, but I enjoyed it all and I'd do it all over again. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Women's Wrestling Focus. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Women's Wrestling Focus content. And again, this is Ella J, signing off.